Hi, I'm Gary from Zone 8B in Texas, here in Southeast Texas. Here to talk to you about 5 things beginning gardeners do to set themselves up for failure. A lot of times I've talked to people and seen them different places, and they do certain things when they first start that really kind of set themselves up, and you know they're going to fail, and it's kind of sad, and it's no fault of their own, but even before they plant the seed, you know that they're probably not going to be successful because there's just some things that down here is different than other parts of the country. First thing is planting dates. When people move here from other parts, or their first time they start, you know, we got 250 some odd days around about growing season, and everybody thinks, well, I've got plenty of time to plant my stuff, plenty of time to do you know, don't have to worry about the planting dates that much because we got such a long growing season. But technically that's right. In practicality, Texas doesn't have a long warm season growing season. We have 2 short ones. We have one in the spring, we have one in the fall. The spring one starts about March, for my area, starts about the first week in March, and for the rest of Texas, it ends July 1st. We hit the summer months and very few things will do well in it. So if you're planting tomato plants and you're saying, okay, I've got plenty of time, you really don't. You want to plant those as early as you can. Sometimes even I will plant them early and try to cover them up even before my frost date, because if I can cover them up, they survive, they get that head start. A lot of times I'm one of the first people to grow tomatoes because I plant them so early. And I do that on purpose because I'm trying to beat that summer heat. Last year in Central Texas, the people that planted early made a small crop. They made some tomatoes, they made some onions, they made some of that stuff. If you plant late, I mean, we started getting, you know, they did. We were a little lucky. We didn't have it was quite as bad. They got 100-degree temperatures in May, and then almost all your garden shuts down. So you've got to get the planting dates right. They do have the agriculture here. The AgriLife Extension Service here does have a sheet in Jefferson County that shows the planting dates. It's really helpful to give you a good idea of the planting dates. Most of the extension services should have that or something like that. And if you get close, that's fine. I mean, you don't have to be in that county. Like this one, I use it even though I'm not actually in Jefferson County. Actually 2 counties above, but it's still close enough. And I can adjust a little bit if I think I need to. But it gives you a good starting point because that is very important to start those plants on time. If you're starting your tomato plants in May, you're not going to be successful. I had a guy one time at work ask me, said, hey, my wife got a good deal on some tomato plants, what's my odds? And I kind of laughed, and the lady next door works with me, she kind of laughed, said, you're going to fail, probably. His best chance was to take those tomato plants all the way through the year and try for a fall crop. He has to plant them because the wife bought them, but you know, peppers are kind of that way too, especially black bell peppers, but I'll get to that next. The other thing I see people do wrong that almost assures a failure is they plant the wrong variety. And that's especially true in fruit trees. And I've got a lot of fruit trees out here, pear trees and peach trees. Not all peach trees are going to grow down here. Down here, people talk about the Alberta peach, and that's the peach they want to grow because they grew it whenever their grandmother was a kid and they liked it. It's still not that great of a peach, but it requires a lot of chill hours. We don't get those chill hours here. They still sell them at the they still sell them at the big box stores. I was at one today. They sell an Alberta peach. It's not going to make down here. Maybe 1 out of 10 years it might put on fruit. We just don't get and chill hours is a temperature gets between 32 and 45 degrees. A tree is built into it. It's not going to flower until it gets those chill hours. If it needs too many chill hours, then it's not going to bloom till way late, and by the end the blooms are already died off because it's been warm and they've desiccated or whatever, and they're not going to produce, even if they do bloom. Sometimes they won't even push out. If you get one that's too early, if you see my first video, that's what happens then, is they bloom too early. I can handle it too early because, you know, you still got, a lot of times you can still make it, but they're too late. You know, you just need to know what your chill hours are. Mine's around 550, 600, and that line kind of goes up through Central Texas, goes up through Austin, and get some that's close to that. Get some that's 500, 400, 600, you know, maybe go up to 700. Get somewhere around that area. Don't try to get one that's got 850, 800 hours. in this area, you're not going to make it. And if you go too far north and get one that's too low, they're going to start trying to bloom for you in December. So get the right chill hours, plant the right variety. Even with tomatoes, a lot of times people, they got that old heirloom tomato that, man, they like that brandy wine. Brandy wines don't do good down here. They just don't like our heat at all. Try to find you. Now, it's good to experiment. Now, I'm not knocking heirlooms, but they tend not to be as productive. There are some that produce okay, but try to find some that really do well in your area. And again, the big box stores don't always sell the best ones. But try to get some little workhorses that's going to do good, and then you can play with some other ones. I try several different tomatoes, try heirlooms. I've tried different determinants. A lot of times you can get a determinant tomato, it can be your workhorse. Get something like that also in your garden. But be careful on your varieties and try to figure out which varieties you need. The third thing I see people will do, and I've done this myself, is they will start out on getting a garden that's too big. They're first time gardener, or they hadn't gardened in a while, or they've gardened small, and they go big. I mean, I've got 3,500 square feet of in-ground gardening. When I first started, I had 2 rows, 75 foot long, and this has only been about 5 years ago, and I couldn't keep up with the weeds. It got too big. I couldn't handle it because I didn't have a good strategy to control the weeds. And a lot of times people will do that, or they want to have a good strategy for irrigating it. Start small. 4x8 raised bed is good. Get you a couple of those and you grow a lot of food in that. And that's a good start to growing your food. Don't try to go, all out and plow up your whole backyard and till it up, because that tiller can till up a lot of land really quick. But can you control the weeds? Can you fertilize it? Do you have a way to do all that other? And if you don't have an experience, it's better to fail small than it is to fail big, because then you get frustrated. Many a time, people's planting a good sized garden and end up, bringing in the lawnmower, because that's the end result, because everything blows up, they can't control it, and they have to mow it down. And they get really frustrated, spend all that time, and then they get much out of it. The fourth one I'm going to talk about is fertilizer. I saved this for fourth because it is kind of controversial, and I don't mean it to be. But your first year in a raised bed, don't be scared of the synthetic fertilizers. If you go in there and you put in that raised bed and you put in that manure, you put in that compost, you're going to probably cheat a little bit. You're going to put in some of that pine bark mulch because it's cheaper. You might even put in grass clippings or leaf clippings, which I don't necessarily recommend, especially on the first time. But you're going to do that, and it's going to look pretty, and it's going to look nice. So you're going to plant those plants, and I've even given talks on it, saying, hey, you should wait 6 to 8 months before you plant into those type of raised beds. I don't do that. I don't think anybody does it, but that's what you should do if you're not going to apply some synthetic fertilizers, because synthetic fertilizers or the conventional old-time fertilizers will give that plant what it needs right then. Those organic fertilizers have to break down because they got really big molecules in that organic fertilizers, and microbes and bacteria have to break it down. And they use nitrogen to break it down with. So they tie up almost all the nitrogen, and your plants can't get access to that nitrogen. That's why when first time you put plants in that raised bed, if you're not using some type of quick release fertilizer, they tend to be stunted, they tend to be small, they don't produce very well. Hey, if you want to go organic farming, that's fine. But that first year, if you're willing to say, I'm gonna have a bad first year, okay. But if you want to grow good that first year, you're going to have to add some fertilizer. Now, don't get any fertilizer that says weed and feed. I never recommend it anyway. But that weed and feed is going to kill your garden. It's made to kill the garden. So don't get anything that says weed. Get you some either ammonium sulfate, which is 2100. Even if you want to go and get some Miracle Grow, don't apply too much. I mean, for a 4x8 bed, get you a handful, maybe 2 handfuls, and spread that out over that whole 4x8 bed, and then see what happens. See if your plants start growing better. See if they respond to it. But don't try to get too locked into one style of gardening and say, I'm going to do that. If you've had experience with it and you've done well, that's fine. You may talk to guys that I've been gardening like this for 10 years, and I have never put any fertilizer down. And that may be true. However, that first year it probably wasn't that good. He's just forgotten, or they've forgotten what it was like when they first started. So again, you may wean yourself off that fertilizer, and that's fine. Or they'll try to put, if you have container garden, containers are not really natural. You're putting a lot of water through those. They don't have mineral soil in it. If you've done it right, you try to put a soilless mix in it, you're going to have to use some synthetics in it, in my estimation. It's very difficult to make it because it's just not a natural environment. You're getting hot and cold, dry and wet. You don't have any mineral soil. You don't have your micronutrients in there, and you got to put all that in that pot at the same time that you're restricting the roots, and you're having to put 200-300 inches of rainfall in that container every year. And it's better off to use the synthetics. Now, again, I'm not knocking organics. I'm not an organic gardener, but I use a lot of organic methods. I don't do it just for practicality. I've got a lot of land. The bulkiness of it, the cost of it's just too high for me. But I know people that do organic farming. I help them. I don't mind it at all. And a lot of my pesticides, where I can, I use organics. But in the fertilizer in that first year, don't be scared of the synthetics. The fifth thing I'm going to talk about is just location. When you set up your garden, you go out there in the wintertime. And my dad did this years ago. They had a patio door, and it let in a lot of heat during the summer. So he said, I'm going to plant a tree in that patio that would give me shade in the summertime for that patio door. So he goes out there in January, February, buys a tree, puts it out, looks at where the sun is, and lines it up to where it's going to give him shade. We never got that patio door shaded. The tree grew good, it grew big, but the sun used to set over here in January, February, and it set way over here during July. And even he kind of looked at it, and I was just a kid, but I remember it because Daddy's looking at it and saying, I messed up. I never realized how far that sun moves. So when you're trying to set up a garden and you're trying to get the full sun, make sure that's where that sun is when you need it. Make sure it's in July that you get full sun, because you may get full sun in January, February, but it may not be full sun when you need it in June. Bonus tip I'm going to talk about: if you're starting new and you're new into gardening, don't plant too many new things. Don't walk out there and say, I'm going to plant, I've got my laundry list of everything I want to grow, and you grow everything. Start out 4 or 5 plants. Start out growing some lettuce, grow some beans, grow a pepper, grow a tomato. Don't sit there and try to go plant 10 different things, because you can get so bogged down. It's not a failure if you have a crop, if you have a crop failure and you know what you did wrong. But if you're growing 10 different things, sometimes something dies and you don't really have time to figure that out. Just grow a few things. Don't grow, and try to get local people to give you the advice. I don't give good advice for people in Oregon or New York or because I don't know what those conditions are there. Try to find someone local. Even on YouTube, try to find something that's close to your area if you can. I can give some advice, and some things is kind of universal, but a lot of things is site specific. Anyway, if you have any questions, if you have any, leave them down in the comments. Hopefully I've been a help, and thank you for watching. Thank you.